Hi guys, today I have 5 tips for you regarding Strinova and the combat kind of side of things. And the first thing I want to talk about today is what you're seeing on screen, which is the different grenades. Now, grenades, if you didn't know, are definitely OP in pretty much any first-person shooter game that you have, primarily because of their utility. But in this case, there's actually way more impactful grenades that you can see in front of you. The one that I want to highlight, however, is actually the healing grenade. Now, to be clear, I think that a lot of players maybe are too fixated on other games like, maybe like Overwatch, where they aren't as familiar with grenades, or maybe it's easy to forget that you have grenades as you're aiming down the sights and such. However, the different kind of grenade, or a specifically different kind of grenade that they give you access to in Strinova, is the healing grenade. Now, if it were just one grenade that you had access to at the start of every single match, I could understand how maybe like a flashbang or a smoke may be the last thing on your mind. However, since killing enemies drops grenades, among other things, on the ground, that kind of leaves these grenades much more important or much more impactful than people give credit to. Now, to be clear, the healing grenade itself, I think, is self-explanatory, but being back up to full health before you have to rotate back over to another site or take back a site is really impactful, especially if you're using something like light regen armor. However, the grenades from things like the flashbangs, or the impact of grenades like the flashbang or even the frag grenades, are very impactful too. Now, that's well and good. However, we should also talk about the shop, which in my opinion is the other thing that a lot of people are a bit confused on, and I haven't seen so many guides on what you're supposed to be using or what you should be buying from here. And while this isn't supposed to necessarily dictate everything that you are using in the shop, one of the major things about the shop that I want to talk about first is that if you aren't familiar with it, once you get into the search and destroy, or the actual unranked / ranked version of the main gameplay loop in this game, it involves buying things from the shop. Now, normally if you buy something, or normally when you start off, you're given access to, well, one upgrade and roughly 150 of the currency, which you can use in most cases just to buy the firing upgrades here. Now, while this is totally fine and does prove to be very useful, after you get to your second round, you'll notice that there are certain players that may or may not have armor. However, what's more impactful, or what's more noticeable, is if you don't have it. Now, I shouldn't have to explain this, but not having any armor in a game like Strinova means that your time to kill is even lower, and in most cases, because certain guns are, well, basically balanced around having maximum light armor or having even heavy armor in some cases, this is quite impactful, and which is why not having it on your second turn is a problem. But then that leads us to the question, well, Connor, Connor, what are you supposed to do if you don't have enough money to buy the second upgrade? Or let's say you bought something like headshot damage instead. Well, actually, by your second turn, you can purchase, like, let's say you had enough to buy something like firing, but on your second round, you didn't have enough to buy regen. Basically, what you could do is you could refund the first purchase that you have, or maybe on your third round, you could refund another purchase that you have, and then buy light regen armor instead. Now, this isn't to say that base damage or any of the firing upgrades, capacity upgrades, etc. aren't worthwhile or impactful, but rather the impact of having armor is so significant, just because surviving for longer and having, well, regenerating armor is so important, especially in a game that has a longer time to kill and is kind of akin to games like Apex Legends, if you're familiar with that. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is specifically combat related, and it talks about the accuracy when you're flying and shooting. Now, bear in mind with me, because I am a terrible shot at the moment. I'm not that deep into Strinova, unfortunately. But when you are shooting traditionally, I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably noticed that things like the recoil patterns, or even accuracy, bullet drop, etc. are big important topics to consider when you're playing any first-person shooter. And with that, we have the first thing that I'd like to mention, which is that there is no accuracy loss when you're flying and shooting. Now, that isn't to say it's easy to fly and shoot, as you're probably about to see right now, but it does mean that if you are trying to shoot at someone while flying or while jumping in midair, or if you're trying to do like a pivot in the midair, or if you're trying to bounce between directions from one direction to another, it does mean that you have perfect accuracy, and it's not as though your bullets will disappear or fly out of where you're aiming just because you're in midair. That isn't the case for other FPS shooters, or FPSs rather. So keep that in mind when you're well, aiming down the sights, or when you're trying to make an outplay and trying to surprise your enemy. This is especially relevant in a game like Strinova, since a lot of times people or players will be trying to do really, goofy tech where they fly off of walls. They're trying to play off of, missing vision. And if you're trying to like jump over someone's head, so long as you are obviously aiming at the enemy, in most cases, or I should say in all cases, your accuracy will not be hindered so long as, well, you are trying to aim at what you're shooting. Now, on that note, another kind of, I guess, like I wouldn't call it a myth buster, but something that you might also be curious about is, well, wall banging. Now, if you aren't familiar with what wall banging refers to, it refers to trying to shoot someone through a wall that you know is directly behind. Now, as you can see, the little robot that I just shot from before is directly behind this wall. And if I was playing something like maybe Apex or even something like Valorant or Counter-Strike, you could definitely shoot through this and, well, kill the enemy that you're seeing behind here. However, despite me shooting my entire clip through here, this is not wall bang through the wall. Now, I don't have access to every character right now, but based on what I've seen in research, this is the case for every gun. That isn't to say that certain skills don't wallbang or apply or hit through on the sides of walls and stuff like that. So keep that in mind when you're trying to test this out. But that's in regards to specifically wallbanging and shooting through walls. Now, the other thing I want to talk about specifically is with the store, and it refers to the terminology. Now, truth be told, the terminology of this game is not that difficult. However, it does require you to have an understanding of what you're looking at. Now, things like the Phantom Mirage, things like butterfly duration and phantom orb HP percent probably make no sense to you unless you know what the skills do. But even if you are familiar with it, you might be confused about what things like stringified damage are, or what, or I guess even what things like, the damage reduction and movement speed specifically are referring to. And while that's talking about the paper form. To be honest, I've seen so many people talk this about or refer to this as like the 2D form, the paper form, etc. But it's stringified. And furthermore, unless if for some reason you were confused about something like the damage reduction and movement speed, which refers to, well, your movement speed or your amount of damage taken while you're in the paper form, this critical hit damage, or the critical hit category here with stringified damage, means that you deal more damage to stringified enemies. It doesn't refer to you being able to shoot in stringified, because as you can see here, the second that you try to shoot, it takes you out of the paper form. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and is something that I talked about earlier, is the armor, because there are probably lots of you that are confused or maybe concerned about whether light regen armor is better than heavy armor. And unlike a game like Valorant or even CSGO, this is not the traditional, I don't have enough money, so I'm going to buy light armor as opposed to heavy. This is, I have a choice between an equally costing but different pros and cons having light armor versus heavy armor. Now, the thing is that heavy armor, of course, like it says, is heavier and gives you more armor, as you're seeing on the left side over here. However, once you flick over to the light regen armor, as you can see, you do gain more armor as well, an additional 50 armor. However, what you also gain access to is 6 armor regen as well. Now, if you are someone that is playing for short trades, or if you are trying to overtake a site, or if you're trying to peek, etc., this could be very helpful, so long as, of course, you don't get one shot. But if you're trying to play a more guns blazing, just entry, or if you're trying to get in and get out as soon as you can, heavy armor might be another alternative for you that you might want to consider. But in most cases, the main difference between heavy and light is just that one regens and the other has more armor as a result. That's going to be it for today's video, though, guys. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a few tips. Again, I know there's a lot of people making content for the game, but to be honest, there's, for whatever reason, a few questions that people just don't go over. And yeah, this is what I found. I've, to be clear, also found this with the help of researching and looking up other creators that have been commenting about things like this, and I just wanted to spread the word. Anyways, thanks again for watching, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to check out the rest of my socials. Hope you at least learned one, maybe 2 things from today's video, and yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.